Sometimes in art, we get this thing that I like to call the perfect storm, where it feels like every single element of a production comes together to make the most optimized version of what that piece of art could be, where it feels like all the acting, directing, the writing, the costuming, it doesn't matter. It feels like every single detail that went into making whatever it is you're consuming was pitch perfect to you. For me, that was my experience with the TV show. I know this much is true. It's not perfect, it's got its flaws, but everything about it just felt like a perfect storm to me. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel here from the GeekSpeakNation channel, and I'm excited to talk about this TV show that I just finally was able to sit down and binge through all 6 episodes, and that's HBO's I Know This Much Is True, which is based off the book of the same name by Wally Lamb, which has now been turned into a full HBO miniseries. And wow, this show just absolutely floored me. Like I said, there's certain elements of the show that don't fully pay off or aren't fully perfect in their presentation, but part of that is to be expected when you're taking a very long novel, like I believe this one was like 900 pages or so or something like that, a pretty thick and dense novel, and you're trying to condense that into a 6-episode story, right? So certain elements are going to get lost in translation, and that's completely understandable, and I'm gonna touch on that later on in the review, what elements do get lost which end up affecting the overall package. But the package that is presented is just so powerful. And for those of you who don't know, the story revolves around a middle-aged man named Dominic Birdsey, who has to take care of his brother Thomas Birdsey, who suffers from paranoid schizophrenia. And after a very violent incident at the start of the first episode, his brother is forced into a mental asylum. And this asylum is like, I think it's a maximum security one, so he's being treated a lot differently and a lot more harshly than his other physicians would be treating him. And so because of that, his brother Dominic, Thomas's brother Dominic, is making it his mission to get his brother out of this asylum and get him back into his regular healthcare facility. This show was really powerful, and I think the crux of obviously what makes the show powerful is going to be the performances in it. Markk Ruffalo in the show plays both of the brothers that I mentioned before. He plays both twins, and that performance that Markk Ruffalo gives is such a powerhouse performance. But what I love about it the most is how Markk Ruffalo's performance is so giving. Right? Oftentimes when we have, people who are playing, those who are mentally challenged or mentally incapable or something like that, or mentally disabled, a lot of actors will use that as their time to shine, like, oh, every scene is about me. Here we go. Pay attention. Lights on, cameras action. Get the snot rolling, get the crying rolling, and yeah, we're going to get all the emotion out of it. And Markk Ruffalo's performance is just, it's not about putting the spotlight on him. It's about bringing out, and oftentimes the most vitriolic nature, trying to get out the most, irritated response out of the people he's in the scene with. And I think that's the most incredible thing about his performance. When he's playing as Thomas, you get that look at that tortured soul, someone who's been abused not only by his family but by the healthcare system, and this person who you feel has been let down, but at the same time his behavior is so erratic and unpredictable. It makes you concerned and terrified, but you just so genuinely care for him. So when you see him in a lot of scenes, you don't know whether or not you kind of afraid of what he's gonna do, or if you're just gonna feel so completely heartbroken for the situation that he's in. And I think the way Markk Ruffalo ends up playing it is just so brilliant, because it's all about giving in the scenes that he's in. He's always playing off of the energy that other people are bringing in a scene, and he's also playing off of just the energy of what is going on and what it's leading up to. And I think that's absolutely brilliant in the way he plays Thomas. Now, in the way he plays Dominic, I think it works in the same way, but in a more antagonistic perspective. Because even though he is, you know, technically the one who is more mentally sound, quote unquote, than his brother Thomas, he is still the one who has a lot of baggage and a lot of, you know, demons that are just really trapped in his heart, and a lot of things that he hasn't worked through emotionally. And so him going through trying to get his brother out becomes this serious self-reflection on who he was and the life that his brother has been living, and how their actions have led them to this very moment that they're at right now, trying to fight to, you know, get his brother out. And it's really, really powerful, because the way Markk Ruffalo plays a lot of the scenes is that he kind of internally knows what's plaguing Dominic in a scene, but the real trick about it is that he's able to make it feel so authentically defensive about trying to deflect how he actually feels. And then when someone starts to question why he starts behaving this way, or why does he push people away, why is he angry about this, why does he use his brother as a scapegoat for a lot of his situations, you know, he lashes out and tries to get that antagonistic response. But the reason why this is so important that he's being such a giving actor is because it allows all the other actors that he stars in with all these other scenes with to truly shine, and to truly give that back and forth of confrontation, or to give that emotional reciprocation in an emotional scene, whether it's him dealing with scenes with his ex-girlfriend. It's as palpable as, like, you know, the scenes where Casey Affleck is talking with Michelle Monaghan in Manchester by the Sea. It's that true, gritty, deep, emotional, not everything you are thinking is being said, but is being evoked type of communication. And it's absolutely fantastic. And I truly think this show is like a masterclass in just being giving with your scene partners and all that sort of stuff. If I was teaching an acting class, I would be showing scenes, you know, from like Manchester by the Sea, and I'd be showing scenes from I Know This Much Is True, because there's so many scenes where people are allowing each other to breathe and interpret the script in different ways and the words that are on the page and bring them to life in their own way. And you could see the millions of different possibilities of how a scene could have ended based on someone's interpretation of how they should react to the way the words are being said. And I think that's just absolutely incredible. So from the acting perspective, the whole entire cast does great. Catherine Hahn, I believe her name is, who plays the ex-girlfriend, does wonderful. She plays as Dessa. She does fantastic. Rosie O'Donnell is good in this show as well. The only character I had an issue with was the character who plays as Markk Ruffalo's character's current girlfriend at the time. I feel like she is one of those characters that probably in the novelization has a lot more depth to her, and has a lot more nuance, and it has a lot more of a heartbreaking story to her that we are not getting to see as an audience member as it is translated over. And I kind of feel like that hurts it. And there's also a character who's a translator. I feel like her story arc is kind of hurt as well. There's just a couple of characters where they're not really given that time to fully develop and to become fully realized three-dimensional characters, as compared to like, oh, this chick's crazy, or oh, this chick's a liar and is dependent. And they're just kind of very shallow characters in their presentation, in my personal opinion, whereas everyone else around them is just such fully realized three-dimensional characters, and I just don't think it's a fair comparison. So, you know, that's kind of like my main gripe with the show that kind of pulls it down a bit, is just seeing how certain characters are just like, you kind of there the whole time, but you're not fully realized, is kind of my issue. But man, the story that Wally Lamb created that has been adapted into this TV show is absolutely fantastic regardless. The performances are truly like the peak icing on the cake, but that story truly hits home. And it's a difficult story to tell when we're talking about mental health in general, but also when we're talking about, you know, mental health institutions, and we're talking about mental health asylums and max security asylums and all that sort of stuff, because the stereotypical view is everything's white padded rooms and all that, and all the caretakers are abusive, and all the other inmates are violent and abusive, and deviants, and it's a hard line to walk between you want to show the realities of what happens in these sorts of institutions, or what has happened in a lot of institutions, especially since this takes place in early 2000s. You want to show, or is it early? No. This is like late 90s. This is like 98, 99. I think it's like 98 is when the book came out. But the main issue is you don't want things to come off as a stereotype, right? And the show walks that very thin line on that when it comes to the depiction of, mental health, and do the therapists really care? Do the physicians really care? All that stuff. I think they kind of draw this kind of nuanced line where there is some room to interpretation with certain characters about how much they truly cared and how commitment they really have into making sure that people are, actually getting healthier or actually staying safer in their institutions. It's a thin line that he walks very carefully, and that the people who ended up adapting the story walk very carefully. But I think it works, and I think it presents something that's very authentic. Especially as someone who's had a family member who, almost had to go to one of these, places. It really does hit home of, being the caretaker or caretaking for someone who's dealing with mental health issues, or diseases or disorders. The show is really powerful in that regard, because it doesn't shy away from how rough things can get, how violent things can get, but it's never doing it in a very exploitative way, or doing things for shock value. Everything is rooted in how Thomas's mind works, and what his family lineage is, what his history, what his parents are, everything about his disorder, his disease, all that sort of stuff is very much rooted in his upbringing, and you see that reflected in how part of his schizophrenia tries to cope with some of the things that he's gone through. It's really powerful in that regard, and it gets me choked up a lot just thinking about the show sometimes, and it's very hard to get through with certain sequences, like when his brother's first being committed. It is very, very painful to get through, but I think this show is so important. I think it is so important. And I think one of the biggest themes that ends up getting talked about in this show, which you really don't see talked about often, is this idea of like family curses and your lineage, and like the curse of your blood. And I think that was just such a powerful theme, because, myself, I know a lot of people feel as though that where they came from or who they were born to defines them, and it doesn't. And that's a hard lesson to absorb. It is a hard lesson to learn that, the sins of the father, the sins of, those in the past, the lack of understanding, the miscommunications, all that sort of stuff, the misconceptions, all of that it holds us back, but it also acts as a very strong reminder of almost like a morality tale of what to avoid, or some of the pitfalls in life that we need to be aware of. And I think this show just gives this very, very powerful depiction about how we end up, using our family history as not only a coping mechanism, but as something that we hold over each other's heads, as something that we use to hurt ourselves and bring ourselves down, and use it as a scapegoat for our lack of growth. It's so powerful, man. It is really powerful, and I think a lot of people need to experience this story, and I feel like a lot of people can relate to it. It's really, really powerful. It's a really, really powerful story. The performances are absolutely fantastic. The writing is absolutely fantastic. The directing is phenomenal. The music choices are wonderful, and the ambient soundtrack in general just hits home. It is a show that embodies melancholy, and it is a show that invites a very, somber self-reflection, but it is worth enduring, because I think you do genuinely come out of the other side as like a better person for watching that show, and, going through the show's invitation of, inviting self-reflection of who you are. you know, as a viewer, you know, and if some of these things end up relating to you, whether it's mental health or the things that you deal with your family's lineage, or, you know, your own self-destructive tendencies and all that stuff, and having that opportunity to self-reflect is just really, really important, because through self-reflection is how we learn. You know, the past is not there to be hidden. It's there to be remembered and reflected upon so that we can grow from it. And I just think that's the most powerful aspect of the show. And I just think that is why, if you know, I know this much is true, is definitely my favorite TV show of 2020 thus far. It is just a show that has hit me like a train, and I feel like not enough people are talking about it, because I really think this show is absolutely phenomenal and deserves so much praise. But with that being said, guys, if you have seen, I know this much is true, let me know in the comment sections down below what you think about it. I really want to hear some feedback and hear some viewpoints from other people who've seen the show, watched the show, and just what was your emotional response to the story, whether you read the original novel or not. I especially want to hear from you people if you have read the original novel and also seen the TV show. You know, give me some comparisons. Is it actually worth picking up the original as well? If I am really this as engaged as I am with the story right now, would I get even more fulfillment out of reading the book? Let me know. And also, while you're down there, guys, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button. And if you're new here, subscribe to become a part of the GeekSpeakNation channel. And if you do subscribe, make sure you do hit that bell notification and set it to all, so you actually get notified of when I post a video. And then maybe you too can help a man resurrect a dead YouTube channel. With that being said, guys, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Daniel, and don't forget to get geeky.